Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me again. I am excited about having a good friend of mine, Dr. April Willis, with me today, and we are going to unpack, as we do every time, what it looks like to stay strong. And so we were just, before we came on the air, talking a little bit about a recent trip that she made to the Netherlands. So she's already got some bonus points with me today. But why don't you just start off talking a little bit about kind of what keeps you busy these days? What are you doing that we should be interested in?
Clearly interviews.
Yes.
Just kidding. So I am very busy right now with my consulting company. And so I'm supporting small businesses, nonprofits, and startups nationally who need a lot of help behind the scenes. So these are normally organizations that need help around human resources, public relations, infrastructure, operations, grant writing, federal compliance, all kinds of fun stuff. And so I'm spending the majority of my time doing work for them. I also spend time, about 25% of the business is dedicated to career coaching. So this looks like writing resumes, cover letters, doing LinkedIn optimizations.
Which, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is how we met, because you helped. I was applying for a position with the Chamber of Commerce here in the area, and I was like, oh, I'm going to see if somebody has some ideas. And so you were gracious enough to help me write a stellar application, which I'm sure was the whole reason I was invited to come on the board.
I remember that, and it was easy to write when you have experience like you do.
Well, all right. So I'm just really curious. We're going to back up and talk a little bit about like how you got into this business, because it's a hard road to hoe. It seems like a very crowded field with a lot of people saying things. And how did you find your way here?
Sure. So I had a lot of experience working at the campus, district, and state levels of education. I also have a lot of degrees. So I've got a doctorate and 3 master's degrees.
Whoa.
One of those master's degrees is an MBA. All of the other ones were in the field of education. So I loved the opportunity that I had in a previous role as a director of business operations for a charter school district in the Austin area. Really enjoyed the business side of things, but I also realized I was kind of reaching a ceiling in the field that I was in. And the only way I was going to break out of that is if I started my own company. Fortunately, I feel very connected to different community leaders in the Central Texas area, so I had a vast network to kind of use as my launching pad.
Awesome.
And whenever I was able to start my own company, there was no shortage of business. I grew so rapidly that I have a team of people now who can support the work that I'm doing.
I love that.
So yeah, it was definitely a smoother transition, I recognize, than most people have. I also felt like I set myself up for success, though, in a sense that although I had established the company in 2018, I still maintained a full-time job so that I wouldn't put a ton of pressure on myself to have to excel on day one. It gave me time to ramp up by working on the business evenings and weekends, establishing a few solid clients, and then I had the goal of, once I'm making as much money or more money in the business, I can leave my full-time job. So that
sounds really smart.
It was great, and it was this very smooth transition, very low stress, and it didn't take as long as I thought it would. So
now, did you always have sometimes I find it interesting to talk about how people were raised and kind of how they grew up. Did you always have a interest in leadership? Did you always kind of find yourself in leadership roles when you were growing up?
Absolutely. So I feel like I do have an interesting upbringing. I am a first-generation college student, even though I have all of those degrees. My mother is an immigrant. She came from Iran in 1978. My dad was in the military. And they raised us, my sister and I, very much with an emphasis in education. Going to school, being active in your education, that comes first. And they absolutely wanted to make sure that we had the opportunities that they never had. And so we were always told to prioritize our school. So while I was in school, I was the president of everything. I was in all of the sports, all of the organizations, and it looked really good on my resume. And it helped me get a full ride to UT. Where I was able to graduate early with my first bachelor's degree, so they paid for my master's as well. And so things just kind of spiraled.
All right. So I'm curious, and we didn't really talk about this part of the interview, so I'm kind of put you on the spot a little bit, but your upbringing kind of brings it to mind. You know, there's this whole conversation that people have about nurture and nature as it relates to leadership. So given the fact that you grew up in a home that not necessarily had a lot of education from the parental side in terms of their own experience, but they emphasized it a lot. How do you answer that question for you in terms of your own experience? How much of what you did was just part of your biology, and then how much was a result of their encouragement and support?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, my parents are incredible. I love them dearly. They're the best parents I could have ever asked for. They live in the Dallas area in the same home that I was born in. So
Wow.
when I go home, it is still Pepto-Bismol pink in my bedroom. Homecoming mums from high school are still up. So it is delightful to go home and visit my parents. But I will say, although they didn't have the college upbringing, they are both very entrepreneurial by spirit. For somebody to have to move across the world by themselves, that takes a lot of guts. And I mean, she's just kind of, that to me seems like she was paving her own way, even though it didn't mean she started a business. It meant that she started a life, which is pretty significant. My father, he owns his own company as well. He established it in 1998. It's just doing mirrors and glass work in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Built it from scratch, had nobody to mentor him or coach him in what that business should look like. And it's still a successful business today. I do say that, and I don't want it to come across like this was just handed to me. There is a lot of work that goes into starting your own business, and they were completely different types of businesses. So what my dad does is not at all similar to what I do.
So you would say part of it was that you saw the example of how they did it, but then, I mean, you obviously, just by hearing you talk and the roles that you fulfilled, that you have an instinct, you have a natural capacity
I do
probably
feel like
for
it
it
naturally is ingrained in us, and I also feel like it doesn't hurt that we have people holding you accountable. Accountability is huge, and so my parents were always right there, always making sure I was doing the right thing. A little bit of fear. I always made the right choice because I did not want to get in trouble. It definitely worked on me. My sister is funny because we make these comparisons with each other all the time. I am the person that if you tell me something is bad, I will not do it. She will do it and be like, I had to see for myself. Like, this was not what I'm supposed to be doing. I was not that way. And so I think that kind of shows a little bit of difference between how, even though we were raised the same with the same parents, our approach to life is slightly different. She's still wildly successful, though. Very proud of her, too. We just take different paths along the way.
I had to laugh at the way, you use the word paths. I think of that, like some people like the well-worn path of, like, I've seen people do this, they go in this direction, and then there are some who have to kind of get all scratched up as they move their way through the forest and make their own path. But, we all seem to get to the destination we need to.
Of course.
Okay, so I'm curious now, the question that I've been asking in this program is about how the strong stay strong. And my guess is that when you are coaching leaders and entrepreneurs, that discouragement, frustration, disappointment is probably a regular part of what you're helping people work through. So even if they have some natural capacity, they have to deal with all the heartaches and the hurdles that come along with just living life and starting a business. So what are some of the things that you find yourself saying regularly to people?
Oh, great question. Several things come to mind. So one of the things that I will often tell people, it is about shifting your mindset. And so oftentimes we might find ourselves in a place where we're making a lot of excuses for why things aren't going the way they're supposed to be going. I was doing all this stuff and it's just not, this happened to me, then this happened to me, and now I can't do this because of this reason. And we just have to stop, take a step back, and evaluate the situation. I like to do it for two different stances. It is your circle of control and your circle of influence. So what are the things that I directly can control to receive the outcomes that I'm seeking? And that might look like I need to pursue further education so that I can look amazing on paper. I might need additional experience, and the best way I can get that without having to apply for stuff is volunteering. It might mean that I need to expand my network. So what are the things that you can do within your control, and then do them? There are things that are always outside of our control, and that falls in your circle of influence. A lot of those are societal norms. There are certain norms around how old you need to be to hold leadership positions, what you should look like to hold leadership positions, what is expected of somebody in a leadership position, what does family planning look like if you want to take a leadership position. There are a lot of things that might be stereotypes, might be biases, prejudices, whatever we want to call them. We know they exist. There is no sense in denying them. You can do everything you want to change them, But for the time being, what can you do to influence it? And that does mean, what am I doing to look good on paper again? What are the things that I can control? Who am I talking to? Am I positioning myself in the world for the place that I want to be in? And so I think if we start to evaluate some of those obstacles, that's probably one of the approaches that I would encourage people to take. The obstacles that you keep listing as excuses, what can you directly control? And then let's do that. Let's do it right now. We'll make a plan so that you can fix it for yourself instead of continuing to place blame. Which I think also leads me to another one of the points that I have is we need to be accountable to ourselves. So you can say all of the reasons of why things aren't going in your favor, but what are you doing to hold yourself accountable so that you can break through some of those things? So, and then the final thing is, if somebody else has done this already, which almost anything we want to do has been done before. There are very few people out here who are really going rogue and creating something that has never been seen by the world. And so one of my favorite mantras is, if so-and-so can do it, so can I. Yeah. Whoever that is for you, whatever that role model is, or that celebrity, or that stardom, or that person in your life that's your best friend, or your mom, or your neighbor, that's doing the thing that you wish you could be doing. Well, if they can do it, so can I. So I love that. Break through that.
Yeah. So when, and I'm just going to play a little bit of the devil's advocate on this, because sometimes people, and I have similar conversations, so I'm curious what you would say. But there are some people who, they hear all that and they say, oh, yeah, that's great. But you don't understand my circumstance. You don't understand my situation. It's just my family or my finances or my marriage or something is just not working, and it makes all of the things that you just talked about absolutely difficult. What is it that you do or say that will help people kind of go past that like major excuse that my life is just not like anybody else's, you don't understand what I'm dealing with, that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I would say, how bad do you want it? So you have to prioritize the things that are happening to you and how you're handling them and what your expectation of life is. And so absolutely things come up that have to be addressed. People are dealing with parents whose health is failing, and you've just got to take care of that. Or you have a child who's chronically ill, and that has to take priority over a lot of your other obligations. Whatever those things are that are coming up, you will have to take a step back and address that and handle it for as long as you need to, because your family always comes first. Your mental well-being always comes first. But that's not going to be a lifelong thing for most of us. For most of us, that's going to be a hiccup, a bump in the road, something that is very unfortunate in the time being, and time will heal that. And at that point, you can position yourself for the role that you want. But if it is something like, well, I just can't get my finances straight. Well, how bad do you want what you want? Let's start working on budgeting. Let's address that root cause. We're not going to continue to slap a Band-Aid on this and just say, okay, well, we've got you covered for this month. Be a leader this month. Well, that's not going to help anything. We need to address what the root cause is. If that's making you feel that you've lost control, or making you feel that you can't pursue the greatness that you should be pursuing because you have something that you just haven't followed through with yet. So of course, if it's family issues, there's not a lot we can do about that besides wait them out. But if it's anything else that you can take control over, you've got to determine how bad you want it and what are you going to do to get that.
Yeah. I love that. And I think that we tend to underestimate how important that is, I think, from desire really matters. Like if you just say you want it and it sounds like you should want it and that's all you have, you're never really going to press past the hardship. Desire really is a big deal.
For sure. It's a huge component of the motivation or the driving force behind accomplishing all that you want to accomplish. It's also not the only thing. So you could have all of the great desire and motivation in the world. If you don't actually execute on anything, you're not going to make progress. If you are executing but begrudgingly executing, you will probably also not achieve greatness. So I do think that there is a combination at play here.
Okay. All right. Now, we talked a little bit about this when we had our initial conversation, and I thought you had such a great answer. But there is I think, an environment of victimhood that sometimes still exists in the hearts and minds of many people. And you said it so well earlier, where there's real victimhood, there is real prejudice, there is real ways in which people still make judgments and assessments about folks and what they can do because of how they look or their background or their ethnicity or something like that. And I'm curious what you say to folks who might be tempted to fall into that mindset and kind of help them to press past whatever environmental impediments they may experience.
Sure. So I think I would default back to you're not the first person to go through this. Whatever it is that you are recognizing as an obstacle right now, somebody has already demonstrated that you can break through. So I would, as just an exercise, identify those people and then see how you might be able to not mimic them, but to learn from them. What are some things that you can do to help you feel empowered so that you can break through some of those barriers? I think one of the easiest ones for people to really be able to implement quickly is joining groups, which is why we see coalitions are so effective, or associations, organizations, different people who are like-minded and are working towards a common objective or a common goal. If you can identify those groups that you really feel like you can fit in, you will automatically feel empowered by recognizing, oh, I'm not alone here.
Right.
There are other people who
so
can
good.
identify with me.
And would you give any advice on how to find some of those associations? Like, it would seem that they're common, but like some of it is relational and some of it's causal. So do you give any advice on how people can find that?
I just tell people to Google search things that they're interested in. I actually have a little handbook that kind of walks people through the stages of a job hunt. Like, where do you go to find a solid job that is aligned with what you're looking for? And it is oftentimes the same way that you would do this. You would just type in your location, the word association, organization, coalition, whatever word you're looking for, and then whatever descriptor you're seeking. So are you looking for a women's organization in Hutto? Guess what? Like 4 of them exist. Are you looking for some type of organization where it's empowering people of color? They exist. Are you looking for one where English isn't your first language? They're all over. So I would just recommend, if you don't have a direct connection to anybody, do a simple Google search with your city, your location, and you will absolutely find something.
Okay, which leads me to something that I have admired about you, which is that you are obviously very busy professionally, and yet you also are very involved voluntarily in the community. 2 things. How do you manage that, and why do you do it?
So I am very involved with the community. So I serve on the City of Hutto Ethics Review Commission. I am president of the Hutto Women's Alliance. I'm also in the Hutto Rotary Club. I am a leader in the Junior League of Austin. And I know I'm also sitting on the advisory board for the Terry Scholar Alumni Association. And there are a few other organizations that don't require as much time. Those are probably the heaviest hitters on my list. And I think there are a few reasons why I do it. One, it is absolutely critical that we give back. When you, it was going to sound maybe a little arrogant, but I do believe that I've been blessed with some pretty amazing gifts, and I need to put them to use. I don't ever want to feel like I didn't use them and they were taken away. And I don't necessarily believe that that's how it works, but I don't ever want to feel like I didn't do all I could with all I had. So I want to make sure that I am investing in people. I also feel that I owe it to people because so many people invested in me when I was younger. I absolutely always felt connected to a group or to a mentor or somebody who took me under their wing. At any point in life, I can look back and identify those key players. And so I want to be that for somebody else.
I love that.
Yeah, and as far as how to make time for it, I think it's with everything else. You have to prioritize some things. And so I also understand when I am joining a new organization, what is that time commitment? How often do they meet? Is it critical that I go to every meeting? Are there optional meetings? If I miss something, can I watch a recording? So like trying to figure out how to balance all of that, but knowing that that is just as an important part of filling in what I would consider part of like my life pie. If you've ever seen, you draw a circle and the different segments of what fills your life up, that's a very important segment to me. So I don't ever want to give that up. And I would kind of equate that right along with having meaningful friendships, and then also exercise. I think exercise is so important. Healthy body, healthy mind. So keep your health up and everything else will follow. And I do feel like that giving back is also another huge portion of that pie.
Love it. Well, you obviously do it too. I know that we talked a little bit about the faith component of your life, and that tends to be a little bit more of a private part of your life, as you have said. But I'm curious if some of the things that you just described is an outgrowth of your connection to God and how you see your faith, and would you be willing to talk a little bit about that?
For sure. So absolutely a Christian, and interesting background there. So I told you my mother's from Iran. She was born and raised Muslim. My dad's from California, and he was born and raised Catholic. And when they met, they decided to become Baptist as a happy medium. So my sister and I were raised as Baptists. I went to a Baptist church. And then when I came to college, I went to Hyde Park Baptist Church, and that was a huge part. I joined a Christian sorority. That was huge for me to feel connected in an organization as large as UT, and not wanting to be negatively influenced because, like I had mentioned, I'm a goody two-shoes, right? Like I am going to stay the course. And so I wanted to surround myself with other people like that. And I think that that's also such an important part of excelling in life, is surrounding yourself by other people who do good things. You oftentimes find that in the church. And so I think that that's kind of where one of the reasons why I do feel so connected to being able to maintain faith as a part, again, of my life pie. But I do feel like being a Christian, although I haven't always been really outspoken about it, I do feel like actions speak louder than words. If I'm demonstrating things that people then, how is she always so happy? Or how is she always getting everything her way? It just seems like things go your way. And my answer would be, I feel like I'm greatly favored. And I also feel like I have a great relationship with the Lord. And I want to always, one of my prayers always is, let me be a light unto others. And so if I can continue to shine brightly and do good things, maybe I don't always have to talk about it. Maybe it will just come through.
Wow. Well, it certainly does, as a observer. Okay, so now I want to go a little bit more personal.
Oh, really?
Yes.
More personal.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and maybe you would say some of the same things, but I have found as a pastor that sometimes, as you talk to other people about things that, might be wise for them in their circumstances, you're definitely thinking through the grid of their issues and their challenges, which may not be the same as you're facing. And so I'm curious, when you think about your own journey, and like, I'm sure you want to do this for the long haul. Like, you want to stay faithful. You want to shine brightly as a light, not just today and tomorrow, but, over the course of your life. Are there some things that you do personally that you find helpful in staying strong?
Good question. I guess the first things that come to mind are giving back. I mean, the Bible talks about that. You are supposed to give back, and it's not just about money all the time. It is about the relationships that you're building, how you're treating other people, what you're prioritizing in your life. And then, of course, the money part too. That's great. But I do feel like investing in other people and causes, that's something that it has been so true in my life over and over. Just when I feel like things are starting to fall apart, and I'm like, I can't believe this. What's going to happen next? Worst case scenario. And the Lord just continues to open more doors for you. Like, the blessings are all around you. I never feel like I've been failed. And I don't think it's because I'm, so immensely blessed and other people aren't. I just feel like we're each in different situations. What has tended to work for me is, as soon as I feel a moment of desperation, being able to snap out of it and figure out, what can I immediately do for somebody else? And I think the other part of that is... Can
I pause on that for a minute? Because I think that is so important. Because what you're just describing, at least as I see it, because I have similar experiences, that when you give out of a place of need, you're reminded about how blessed you are.
Absolutely.
And it's like, otherwise I can just kind of cycle downward and go, oh, woe is me, life is hard. But then you help somebody else and you're like, A, you know what? Other people have hard lives. Yeah. But B, I still have something to contribute.
For sure. And it's not even, and so I know, like, one, you might look at it as like a side effect is, oh, well, if I give, then I can expect something back. And although the Bible does talk about that, I don't think that if that's your heart going into it, then you might not get as much out of it. But if instead you can literally shift your mindset, like we had talked about at the beginning, if you can shift your mindset to, I have something valuable, I have something that is making me worthy at this moment, and if I can turn around and share it with somebody else, I can be a blessing to them. Although it's hard for me right now, somebody else is going through something much harder, and if I can be a blessing for them, I can help turn their life around. I could be the answer to a prayer, which again might make me sound a little like, oh, she's very full of herself. I don't mean to be, but that's really the thought process that I go through, is it becomes less about me and more about the other person. And then I almost always, I think that I can think back on every time I remember doing that, or I can recall going through an experience like that, it is not long after that I just feel abundantly blessed by something else that came out of the clear blue. And you're like, where did this come from? And I like to attribute it to the things that I previously did. Of course, I have no proof that that's what happened, but it makes a really great story in my head. And it continues to motivate me to make those mind shifts and take those actions. And then not just when I'm feeling bad or down, but it becomes a lifestyle.
Cool. All right. What else do you do that keeps you strong and that you imagine being part of your journey moving forward, keeping you on track?
I think not letting other people define the parameters that you operate within. So for me, one of the most pivotal moments I feel like in becoming an entrepreneur was before I ever had the idea of starting my own business. I had applied for a job that I thought I was very qualified for. And the person who was interviewing me said at the end of the interview, well, frankly, April, you are overeducated and underexperienced. And that really lit a fire within me because it was like, you can't tell me that. Although chronologically, I might look like I haven't had as much experience, the breadth of the experience I had is significant, but you're not going to give me an opportunity to show that. And so that motivated me to write a whole book about it. And I wrote a book called Overeducated, Underexperienced, Navigating the Saturated Workforce because I felt like I went through a whole lot to move up the ladder very quickly. And again, I know I'm not the only person going through this. I'm not that special. Other people are going through it, but they don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. So I essentially made a guidebook to hand out to high schoolers, college graduates that says, this is how you get your foot in the door with your first job, and then this is how you move up that ladder. So my answer to adversity is light a fire. Whatever that is that was put in your way, or whatever person tried to say, well, I'm going to put you in this box and you don't quite belong there, turn that around into something very positive. And now that book is actually the basis of a scholarship that's in its 5th year. And so every single year, all proceeds from the book sale go into a scholarship, and we help a graduating high school senior go to college. So it's turned into something really fantastic. And since then, I've written a few more books. So I had no idea I was going to be an author, and it all came because of a bad interview.
Now, you keep saying that, like, before we got on the air, she asked me about these black sheep, and she said, oh, I don't identify at all with that black sheep. I've been a goody-goody. But you have just said that there have been moments and times where you have been put in a position that you didn't feel like you deserved to be in, and you used it as a motivator to not only help yourself, but help others. And that's really the art behind this black sheep, too.
Well, those sheep are much deeper than I ever thought they were.
Okay, so you've already mentioned one, but I'd like to press on the issue of, like, when you faced hurdles, because part of what I hear when I hear your story, and I think this every time we have a conversation, is, man, she is so talented, she's so gifted, she's so, like, she's killing it. Have you had seasons where it wasn't working so well and things were not playing out as beautifully as you had hoped? And what did you do in that time?
Absolutely. I had a season in life where my career was not where I wanted it to be. And what's interesting is I recognize that compared to other people, especially my age, I put a ridiculous amount of weight on the quality of my career life. And I also want to call out that I put so much into my career because I don't have children. And I know oftentimes at this stage in life, females have kids that they pour everything into. Well, for me, my job is what I pour everything into. And my professional success, to me, I know is not the same as having a kid, but in my life, that's the equivalent. So I wake up with purpose to do good work. And there was a time where that was not a possibility. And I felt like I had mentioned, I was like, I think this is the most depressed I've ever been because I don't have a job that I'm feeling like I can be put to good use. I feel like my life is starting to waste away. And I know a lot of people might look back on this and just like, she hasn't seen anything yet. Like, this girl has an eyeful coming to her later when she experiences real life, which I absolutely recognize. And but in my perceived experience, this was a lower time for me than most. And so what I did with that time, though, is I sulked a little bit. And then I also started following some, I don't want to call them influencers, but people who are making a big splash in the professional world. as entrepreneurial women. Specifically, I was looking at women who were doing the things that I wanted to do, and they were at a stage in their career where I felt like I could get there. So going back to that, if they can do it, I can do it statement, that's how I play that out over and over again. So anytime I do face that adversity, I identify somebody, then I'm like, that's what I want, and I'm going to get there. So I need to follow them. I'm going to watch their videos. I'm going to buy their products. I'm going to do whatever it is that they tell me I need to do so that I can get there. And then once I do feel like, hey, I've achieved the level of greatness that I'm looking for out of this professional role, it's not time to stop. It's time to build it and make it my own. And so now I become the person that I'm hoping other people look at and they're like, I want to get there. How do I do that? And so then I can continue to coach them. And then hopefully along the way, you're learning all of these amazing skills and strategies and practices and tactics that you can use to prevent you from ever feeling like the way you originally felt that got you in that position.
Yeah. Good for you, man. Good for you. All right. So my guess is that as people have heard you, they would say, wow, I might like to talk to her about some of the coaching that she does. How do people get in touch with you?
Sure. You can reach me via email, aprilacm@gmail.com, but I'm also on all the social media. I am LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. That's out there. I'm on it. TikTok videos are really lame, though, so I wouldn't recommend following me on TikTok. But everything else, yeah, please do reach out to me. I have a website, aprilwillisconsulting.com. I'd be happy to chat with you.
Well, thank you so much for doing this with me today. We had tried to work this out several times, and we finally got it on the calendar, and I'm so grateful. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks for watching.